we've got 6 kids, Kylie and I have 6 kids, and one of our children has an ADHD diagnosis. So I just want you to know I'm not sitting here on my perch telling everyone how to deal with life with an ADHD child, having never been there. Um, one of our kids is definitely right there in the zone. Beyond that, while I haven't gone and been formally diagnosed as somebody with a PhD in psychology, there's a whole lot of signals, a whole lot of signs that point towards me having the potential to get the diagnosis, or at least having been able to get it when I was younger if I wanted it. So I've watched it, I've experienced it, although I think that if I can get it, it would be at a low level, and certainly with my own daughter having that happen. So what is it like for an ADHD child? The reason we're talking about this, sometimes as parents, we get so caught up in our own stuff and the baggage that we're carrying and the struggles and the challenges and everything that life does that we kind of forget to look at the world through their frame of reference, through their eyes, to walk a mile in their shoes. So let's talk about this. ADHD kids, as a general rule, not always, but on average, struggle with school. That was me. It's definitely my daughter. They don't have an intelligence problem. What they do have is a focus and an inhibition problem. So they typically get lower grades. Not always. Now, there are some kids with ADHD who do really, really well. They've just got that innate brilliance where they pick stuff up and they understand it. But that's not every ADHD child. I think the hardest thing, though, for a parent of an ADHD child is the struggle that they have with friends. Now, you combine ADHD with autism or anxiety or both or more, and these things are only exacerbated. How hard is it? I mean, if you've got ADHD, you've got these challenging behaviors. You miss out on the birthday parties, you miss out on the sleepovers, you miss out on the bike rides in the neighborhood or the hangout at the park. And the reason that that often happens is, especially if you're impulsive and hyperactive, you don't inhibit yourself so well. And so you talk over people. You talk too much. Your communication is overdone because you're so desperate to make and keep friends. If you're inattentive, you forget what someone said to you. You forget anything that was important to another person. It works against you. So friends and social issues are so hard. Life for an ADHD child can be challenging at home as well, in family relationships, because you've got tired and stressed and over at parents who sometimes do and say things that leave kids feeling unworthy and lousy. We'll talk about that in a later module. And siblings can be awfully, awfully unkind as well. It's just so hard, so hard. Let's talk about the emotional life of a child with ADHD. When inhibition and regulation are your kryptonite, it means that your big emotions get really big and they can be so hard to control. And then someone says, calm down, stop it, behave yourself. Emotionally, the turmoil. Then there's the big behaviors that follow the big emotions, because impulsivity and inattention mean that if anything at all is uninteresting, then a child's going to want to move on, right? They're looking for something that's worthy of their focus, and boring stuff just doesn't cut it. So you've got a lack of inhibition combined with big emotions, which can turn into explosive behavior. And all of these things combined, struggle with school, struggle with friends, struggle with family relationships, struggle with big emotions, struggle with big behaviors. All of this leads to struggles with self-esteem, right? When they're constantly questioning their competence, or they're having significant adults in their life, like teachers, parents, and even peers, questioning their capability and their competence. They start to question their worth, which increases their risk of depression and anxiety and other comorbidities. So life for an ADHD child, gosh, it's so tough. And it all comes down to this one word: inhibition. Inhibition. So my daughter, I've shared this in a previous workshop that I did about ADHD, or a previous webinar. When she was 7 years old, my ADHD daughter, we were sitting in a church meeting. Our family goes to church most weeks, and we're sitting in a church meeting, and she is just wriggling and jiggling. I mean, she's all over the place, and she's turning around and distracting people behind us, and she's poking her sisters, and just warning after warning, "Hey, kiddo, you need to calm down. Oh, could you just pause for a second?" She keeps going and she keeps going and she keeps going until finally I say, "Emily, you need to stop. You just need to stay still." And I'm the parenting expert, right? So I'm trying to say it with a big smile on my face, and I'm trying to be gentle to her, but I'm like, "Just stay still." And she looks at me with the most beautiful smile on her face, and she says, "Daddy, I'm a shark. If I stop moving, I'll die." And I was like, that's it. That's exactly what's going on. See, when you're an ADHD kid, when you're living with ADHD, quite often that inhibition, that impulsivity, that need to act now is because the future doesn't make sense. It doesn't relate to now. Now is all I've got. I can't trust that the future is going to be okay. So I need to do it all and I need to do it now. I can't even conceive of the future because I'm a kid and the future is like tonight or in an hour or in 5 minutes. I can't imagine what it's like to be 15 or 25 or 40. It just doesn't make sense. So that's what we're up against. That's the great challenge. Now, ADHD is not about intelligence. Plenty of ADHD kids that are super intelligent. It's about focus. It's about inhibition. It's about regulation. And that's where the struggle lies. Now, when you're an ADHD parent living with ADHD, right? Whether you've got it yourself or you've got a kid who's got it and you're living with them. And it's so exhausting, isn't it? Like a typhoon. It's like sometimes the kitchen feels like a war zone with the lack of inhibition, with the big emotions. There's the stress, there's the hope, the worry. Is my child going to be okay? And that's, I think, at the heart of it all, right? That's what gets us more than anything. Will my child be okay?